Good evening. We are calling this meeting to order. If you could please rise and pay attention to Councilwoman Hiller for the invocation to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to introduce Joe Mitchell, who will share with us words from the Prairie Band Potawatomi culture to start our meeting tonight. Joe, and you're welcome to come up whenever. Joe's a member of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation and is also elected by his tribe to the Gaming Commission of Prairie Band. Joe was actually born in Topeka, he says, at St. Francis, but otherwise has been raised in Mayetta and in relation to the tribal reservation. He attended Haskell University and has been deeply involved personally and through his family in the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation tribe and the strong presence and part of our community that they represent on the res and here in Topeka. Today, Joe and his wife Jamie are raising 2 children, ages 7 and 5 in that world as well. Joe's grandma was one of the last, he tells me, was one of the last of the fluent native language speakers that the tribe had. And his uncle, Gary Mitchell, now passed, was almost legendary as the tribal historian and storyteller. So we're honored to have Joe with us tonight to share a little of their culture as our invocation. Joe.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hiller. Aho kosnan kuido chkemen we no gijget. Mina no we do that when we do chkago. And don't mago kosnan mina piwazi men. Paul bom chakwi shote yet. Jackie Mingo we go no ash matza when wap the note there judgy yak. Nijok mo yak no gajok every na matza wat. Nijok mushanak we can namak ote when it meow. And nijok mago we go na we no week to tat you gon. Kinan a week pong you go. Ego in chakshishnak go. I just wanted to say that little bit in my Potawatomi language. And I asked our creator, to give us another good day and ask for a good feeling in here. And I ask that for everyone in here to be watched over and your families and your homes. And I prayed also for our sick people. We hope that they can be helped. And also I ask that, we can all get along so that we will love each other. And I just want to thank everyone in this room for all that you do. And I pray that you can continue to help more people the best way you know how. Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chambers, you guys are on mute. We can't hear anything you guys are saying.
Sorry, that's my bad.
Councilwoman, thank you for calling it like it is. Can you hear us now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Awesome. You missed an awesome prayer. We now proceed to the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla,
Here.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Aquila,
Here.
Ortiz, Emerson,
Here.
Padilla,
Here.
Nager,
Here.
Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Lester.
Here.
We have 10 present.
All right, we move on to proclamations. If I could have Tony and Erica join me at the front. Say something, guys. I could get used to this no mask, double back life. It is awesome. All right, so we have a proclamation this evening for National Gun Violence Awareness Day. And it states that whereas every day more than 100 Americans are killed by gun violence, alongside more than 230 who are shot and wounded. On average, there are more than 13,000 gun homicides every year. And Americans are 25 times more likely to die by gun homicide than other high-income countries. And in Kansas, we've had 401 gun deaths every year, with a rate of 13.9 deaths by 100,000 people. Kansas has the 22nd highest rate of gun deaths every year in the U.S., and Gun homicides and assaults are concentrated in cities with more than half of all firearm-related gun deaths in the nation, nearly occurring in 127 cities. So whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever, as the COVID-19 pandemic continues to exacerbate gun violence after more than a year of increased gun sales, increased calls to suicide and domestic violence hotlines, and we've seen an increase in city gun violence, we are asking anybody that can to pledge to wear orange on June 4th, the first Friday in June 2021, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And by wearing orange on that last Friday, Americans will raise awareness about gun violence and the honor of the lives of those who were lost and that are survivors. And we renew our commitment to reducing gun violence and do all that we can to keep firearms out of the wrong hands and to encourage responsible gun ownership to keep our children safe. Now, therefore, I, Michelle de la Isla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby proclaim the City of Topeka, Kansas, the first Friday in June as National Gun Awareness Day. It's interesting because as we walk in, you see that our police department has signs outside with rewards that if you understand or know of somebody that has a firearm that shouldn't have it, to call our police department. This is extremely important. It's not about not supporting individuals who want to have access to their Second Amendment rights. It's about ensuring that those that are not supposed to have firearms don't have access to them. So thank you so much for your advocacy. I would love for you guys to say a few words.
I'm going to try my best to keep this short. So thank you, Madam Mayor, for your proclamation, because gun violence awareness is clearly an epidemic in this country, and it's time that we stand up and do something about it. One of the statistics that I always find the most alarming is that gun violence or the use of guns is the #1 cause of death amongst our children in Kansas. And so I think about the mothers who mourn the loss of their child. I think about one of the members of our group named Tanya Boyd, who wishes she could call her daughter just one more time. For one of the members of our group named Angela Lee, who has lost 2 children to gun violence, who wishes she could see her children or hug her children just one more time. And so I know that gun sense legislation can sometimes create inconveniences for some people in regards to time, perhaps a waiting period, for example. But I'd like you to think about it in a little bit different sense in terms of time, in terms of hugging your child one more time and spending more time with them, because it's not time to stick to the status quo. It's not time to accept things the way they are. It's time to get to work, and it's time to do better for our kids.
First of all, I'd like to thank the mayor, and we will miss you when you're gone. You never know what you're missing until they are gone. And I would like to thank all the council members for inviting us here for this proclamation. It is truly an honor. We have 2 people that are not here from our organization, Moms Demand Action and Dads, is Hannah and Danielle. They are the rock of our organization. If ever any of you have a chance to come to any of our meetings, you will see what we are really committed to our mission to not really get rid of guns, but to make people aware that people should respect guns and should also make it safe for our community. I also, if I can have just a few seconds, if I may, just do, I'm also teach classes for Be Safe, and Be Smart, I'm sorry, anyway, it is being safe. But what I do in this class is I can teach anyone, whether it is police, council, schools, neighborhoods. It is to teach people that Be Smart is broken down to where keep your guns to be secure, whether it's in cars, lock them up. I mean, put a gun lock on them. Whether it's at home, if a lock's on a gun, you really can't. It's no good for it to be stolen, or if a person wanted to commit suicide, it takes too long to take a lock off. People think harder when the gun is locked up. The M in SMART stands for being a model, in your, with guns. Be that person to teach people about guns. They're not something like we see on TV and movies and things like that. They're dangerous. The A in SMART stands for ask about the presence of unsecured guns in homes. If your kids go to, over to a party, be responsible and ask that parent, is there a gun in that house? Where is the gun? Make sure that we ask people about, are there going to be alcohol present? Is there going to be drugs? Is there even going to be sex? But we never ask about guns. Recognize, the R in that is recognize the risk of teen suicide. Teens are more likely, if there's a gun in a house, to commit suicide rather than deal with the issue of suicide. It's better to talk it over. There are hotlines that kids can use. And the T in SMART stands for, tell your peers to be smart too, about gun violence and what we can do as adults. We can be responsible for this stuff. We can be a better community for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now proceed to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A are minutes of the regular meeting of June 1, 2021, and there's a list of cereal malt beverage applications, and staff is recommending approval.
We have heard the consent agenda. What is the pleasure of the governing body? We have a motion by Councilman Dobler, a second by Councilman Emerson. Do we have any comments or questions with regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Council members Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz, yes, and Emerson.
Ortiz nodded yes.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
All right, we now move on to the action items. Action item A, if the clerk would read.
A is approval of real estate agreement between Brandon Richard and the City of Topeka in the amount of $150,000 to purchase the property and residence located at 1420 Southwest Ward Parkway.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. After the flooding we experienced in various parts of town last July, staff began to research options to address the areas of flooding. One of the options that was considered was the purchase of property. Tonight we have on the agenda the purchase of 3 homes to provide flood mitigation. Braxton, would you like to make any additional comments tonight relating this item? Please.
Thank you. The first action item is the house located at 1420 Ward Parkway. Basically, this is along a channel that drains a 255-acre basin. During the flood event in July, water left the channel, flooded the gentleman's house. We looked at some potential options in terms of mitigation of going upstream and adding some detention. But the scope of that in terms of excavating 13,000 cubic yards of material was only going to reduce the runoff by about 7%. It was just not cost effective. What we put in front of you is what I believe is the most cost-effective proposal relating to this stormwater, and that is to purchase the home, demolish it, and then put that back to just green space. I'll gladly stand for any questions on this agenda item.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, what is the pleasure of the body?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Lesser, second by Councilman Emerson. Comments or questions before we proceed by voting? Seeing none, we proceed with the vote.
Council members Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Padilla.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a approval of a real estate agreement between Mason Combs and the City of Topeka in the amount of $132,000 to purchase the property and residence located at 2919 Southwest Lane Street.
City Manager?
You went to C, and we should be on B.
Let's try B. Approval of a real estate agreement between Charles R. Snow III and the City of Topeka in the amount of $137,000 to purchase the property and residence located at 2913 Southwest Lane Street.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. The same comments would apply to this property as well, but there may be some other specific related to this property that Braxton could explain.
Thank you for the opportunity. I will describe the drainage issue that equates to both 2913 and 2919. These two homes are located in, if we were going to take the subdivision now, it would have been clearly dedicated as a drainage easement. So these two homes are located very close together, and between them is a large diameter enclosed pipe that once we modeled it, we realized that it wasn't even capable of conveying the 10-year storm event. In talking to the property owners in the course of the negotiations, I found out that their basements had both repeatedly flooded over the years. Again, what we're looking at on this particular one is a 101.5 acre drainage basin that comes to a head going between these two properties that surcharges this pipe that can't convey the 10. We've looked at the other improvements the consultant recommended for this particular conveyance system was $2.5 million of improvements. Obviously, this is far more cost effective to buy the two homes that are adversely affected in rain events. Again, the plan would be to demolish those and put it back to green space along with a swale to allow for overflow conveyance down to the street of the 100. Because of the geometry of how low this is relative to the crossing at 29th Street that flows north into the Country Club property, we didn't have the ability to upsize this conveyance system to handle anything greater than the 10. So again, my recommendation on this is to purchase the homes. Again, as I mentioned, knowing what we know now, if we knew that back then, 50 years ago, we never would have allowed these homes to be built in this place. It would have been dedicated as a drainage easement for overland flow. With that, I'll gladly stand for any questions that you have, and we'll start with 29. This item is 2913.
Okay, any questions for Braxton? Councilman Dobler?
Just a quick one, Braxton. I know the source of funding on all three of these are utility revenue bonds. Are we actually going to bond these, or are we paying cash out of the stormwater utility?
The overall funding source for the program that this is coming out of is revenue bonds, because I'm looking at the entire program that includes substantial improvements. And I believe that the question bond counsel will ask is, when looking overall at the program, is there substantial capital investment that would last longer than the 30 years? So they don't look at it on a snapshot of project by project. They're looking at it overall in the total program.
So this is part of a bigger stormwater program?
Yes, sir.
Each one of these will have additional
Approximately $2 million
construction.
in this particular program.
All right. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you. Mr. Coakley, with these homes are obviously close to other homes, whereas I feel like the Wood Parkway house was next to some county land. In surveying these two homes in particular, did you run into any issues with any of the other neighbors having flooding?
No, ma'am, that's a great question. So when we modeled this, it only affected these two homes, and these are the only two that we're aware of the complaints. Again, part of the project would be demolishing and then created a turf grass swale to provide a safe conveyance to help channel that water and get it down to the street where the storm conveyance system could take it back across 29th.
Awesome. And then a follow-up question to that, with that, by taking care of this issue in this way, would that also protect the other homes from having the same sort of flooding or drainage system? I mean, drainage problems.
Again, none of the other homes had complaints in terms of of flood complaints, but by removing the homes and adding an additional swale, that adds an additional factor of safety in terms of giving a safe course for that water, the stormwater runoff, to flow down to the street.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Additional comments or questions? We lost Councilwoman Ortiz. What is the pleasure of the governing body? There she is. We have a motion for approval by Councilman Emerson, a second by the Deputy Mayor. There's no additional discussion. Oh, Councilman Duncan.
I just comment, I've had 0 conversations or any communication with Mr. Snow on this property, but I'm a longtime family friend, so I will be abstaining just to avoid any possible improprieties or conflicts there. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we proceed by voting.
Okay. Council members Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan is abstaining. Councilmember Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
and Nager.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, Mr. Duncan abstaining. The motion carries.
We now move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
C is approval of a real estate agreement between Mason Combs and the City of Topeka in the amount of $132,000 to purchase the property and residence located at 2919 Southwest Lane Street.
City Manager.
Obviously, you heard the comments already from Braxton, and they apply to this one, so unless there are any questions specific to this project.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Lesser. Do we have a second? By Councilwoman Ortiz. Any other questions or comments on this item?
Mayor, just a comment. Over the years, I've worked on a lot of either these projects or projects in other cities like this, and these are very tough things. I just want to commend Braxton and his crew. This is a great solution. I'll probably have to turn on my contractor card for saying that, but this is a great solution. You save the city a lot of money here, and you made the people whole, and that's a tough thing to do in these situations. So, great work.
Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. Okay, additional comments or questions? We proceed by voting.
Council members Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
We move on to item D, if the clerk would read.
D is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout concerning the reorganization of certain city departments, amending various sections of the Topeka Municipal Code, Chapters 2.20, 2.25, 3.30, 8.60, 8.65, and 8.80.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This particular item we've had before the governing body before, and what we've done is, since were multiple components to that, the proposal as it was originally done, we broke it up into a couple of different areas. The one that we were most prepared and were able to conduct the process of review again is the one related to the Neighborhood Relations Department reorganization as it relates to other departments, and then some cleanup of other items that reflect that section of the code. I conducted a meeting with the CACs that relates to these changes that were made and received a great deal of input from them. I also surveyed the NIAs and received 13 responses from the NIAs to my survey with a number of comments. I also met with the NIAs in what I would consider like a town hall setting. I had 8 that attended that meeting, and we discussed the various issues. And the comments that I received from that session were that the services have pretty much remained the same. Not a lot of difference noticed within regards to the provision of service. However, They did have some comments as it relates to they wish they would have been informed of the decision that I was making as far as where these divisions would go within the departments, and that they wish they had been able to be involved rather than find out after the fact. And I understand that request. At the time, decisions needed to be made in a hurry related to when we made decisions to do those cost-saving moves as related to the COVID concerns. And so decisions were made, but they probably could have been notified and had the discussions before they were made more permanent. So learn from that. So they made some other comments related to wanting to have more access to planning engineering staff as we look forward for their planning that they look to do in their neighborhoods in order to, as they consider their SORT projects and other things that are happening, and better understand if we transition into a drainage program, which we'll bring to you eventually here, is an understanding of what is needed within their neighborhood. They also had some questions about understanding what would happen related to the brownfield grants if they're occurring within their neighborhood, and just continue to want to see information that gets to them from the various city departments as they need it. They felt that they continue to work well with the Community Engagement Division. I think that the change related to having the ombudsman there is something that is still evolving, but has met with some success so far of allowing citizens, and it hasn't degraded the responses that are provided by the community engagement staff to have Monique as the ombudsman. So it was good comments. I felt like we were able to air some things and get a better understanding of how to continue to interact with them. There are other changes that were in the other section, and we'll eventually bring those back. I don't know exact timing. I need to meet with the CAC in July to discuss those other components that were part of this reorganization, changes that were made in the CAC ordinance. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers what I had. There was one change that, through some discussions that I had with Councilwoman Hiller over some of the language, I did agree with her that there was a change that would be beneficial, and that the planning director or designee to serve on the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Committee. That what the idea was is that I intend to have the planning director be on that board, that committee, and also chair the committee, but sometimes things happen, and if for some reason Bill had to take some time away for whatever reason, I would want to be able to continue to do business with that committee, and so be able to appoint a designee is important for us in order to continue to do business. Not likely to be needed, but it is something that it would be better for us to have as a concern. So those are my comments. I'll stand for questions.
Well, can I make a comment rather than a question? Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. You know, I'm not going to support any of this tonight, and I never have from the beginning. Because of personnel issues that we know we cannot discuss, amongst other things, the Department of Neighborhood Relations was dismantled a year ago. We could use dismantled, demolished, had the rug pulled out from under them, etc. But I guess the proper verbiage that we're using right now is restructured. So here we are getting ready tonight to vote on this after the fact, which if it feels backwards to some of you, it sure feels backwards to me. Folks in neighborhoods have concerns, and I do too. I know, Brent, that you can say that you have met with folks. I'm sure you met with folks in my NIAs. In District 2, I am going to tell you as well that you may not have heard additional comments that they were not willing to tell you. And one of those is being they're the last to know, which they basically said, but that the wording that the city is there for NIAs and for our neighborhoods that are continue to struggle is just a lot of talk sometimes And we can see that by this decision that was made. I know you said that you learned from the process, you learned from the input, but that really doesn't jive to me because the decision was already made. And I don't think that it's a decision that should have come to us as individual council members asking what we believe, what our thoughts were on the dissolution of the department. I do not believe it's a good idea. I think no matter how hard Monique and Sarah and Latoya work, I think they're going to have a hard time because I know that they're being given other duties as well. I think folks are concerned that they're not going to have the same access. The division of the different departments and different under different departments, rather than what they are used to, I think caught many off guard. And what it all feels and smacks to me of, again, is how quickly we make these decisions. Well, I'm not going to say we, because I didn't agree to this, but I mean, it's not something I support, but how quickly decisions are made. And just like we have our agenda chock full tonight of neighborhood revitalization plan, the neighborhood health, we have this all jam-packed in one meeting, rather than take the time that is needed to have the worthwhile discussions on the neighborhoods that we know are suffering in the city. So I just wanted to say it feels like another reactive move on the city's part, and I will be voting no on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other comments? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. One way or another, I think I reached out to everyone this afternoon with 2 amendments that I would like to make. And I would like to introduce them in the context of the fact that at this point, what's before you is 39 pages worth of work. The city manager's done a lot of work. I don't know if the change in the reorganization of the department's going to work, but I really appreciate the fact that you've taken hold of it. You've really worked it. I appreciate that you're now meeting with the NIAs to start that process, to talk about not only this change, but the DREAMS process and step by step going into a different approach to how we've been doing things. And it is in fact only with those things in mind that I have the 2 amendments. So with all the big changes that the staff has made, even since April, I think my 2 are kind of small. But I do think they're important and wanted to offer them. And you've got a handout, those who are here in person today, that shows the existing language in the proposal, and then the 2 one-liners of change that I would want to recommend. And the first one, which the city staff is proposing to add a qualification item to grants for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Not exactly a reorganization thing, but was added there. And the language that was suggested talked about, related the decision-making to be made in terms of priorities that were stated in the recent housing study and any amendments from the housing study. My change is only because when you're going to do something in the Topeka Municipal Code, it needs to be timeless. We could do another housing study in a year. There could be other priorities that emerge even by the first time that grants are made. So it's a proposal that you can see on that second page to simply substitute for the reference to the current market study by name, and instead just say, does the request meet a priority identified for this particular funding cycle? I'll read both of them or review both of them. I'll keep it really brief because you've had a copy to look at, and then see what you want to do. The second one is right in line with the city manager's discussion that he's beginning to talk to the NIAs much more directly about their priorities for how programs would run out. The proposal from this, there are some really excellent qualifiers in the description of how funding would be prioritized in the city's consolidated plan. Staff was recommending that we add a word and have a sentence at the very end of it that says resources will be primarily concentrated in the intensive care and at-risk areas as defined in the health maps, and it's a little longer than that. My proposal is to delete that sentence. And the reason is that there are discussions underway right now about the SORT program and about the DREAMS, about shifting into a DREAMS program. Some of those discussions have to do with the fact that staff has in the past, with the support of the council, paired all the big housing money with the SORT money. We're going to see the health maps later today and vote on them sometime in the future, and the neighborhoods haven't even seen them. Part of the debate is, should we limit the funding all just to intensive care and at-risk neighborhoods? What about prevention? What about special projects that would make a great deal of difference in a particular neighborhood? What about an LMI housing development that could go into an area that's not low income or disadvantaged at the moment? The funding that we have from HUD and other funding, such as from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund or special grants we get, could be best used in different areas. Each program is going to set its own priorities for how it gets targeted. I think to target that here in the Topeka Municipal Code is preemptive, kind of a backdoor way that could have unintended consequences. And so my suggestion is we leave all the other recommendations that the staff has, but we drop that one last sentence for that reason. If people have questions or want to have conversation about that, I'm open, and then I would move those two amendments unless somebody wants to split them up or do something different.
City manager or city attorney, are there any legal repercussions for the language that has been provided? This is based on the grants?
It's our
I know.
policy.
Yeah, but based on the grants that we received in order for us to facilitate all this.
I don't believe so from the standpoint of the language is, I think, in number 14 that she's looking at change, it's benign enough. It's still saying the priority, and it's whatever we've been using in order to determine what those priorities are. So calling it out, as she said, isn't absolutely necessary. And then, I think the last one that she's looking at deleting, I think that we still have references to that in our con plan. So I think that still is accomplished in that respect.
Wonderful. Well, if anybody in the body would like to make a motion to amend, Councilwoman, would you like to make these in the motion? For both
I would,
of them?
thank you. And I would point out, thank you for your comment on we approve the con plan every year, so we have the opportunity to do that targeting of whatever at that time. With that, I would move that the two amendments that are proposed on your handout.
And mine.
And yours. And City Manager Trout's amendment all be approved to amend the proposed document.
Okay, do we have a second?
Make a second.
Deputy Mayor, second. Comments or questions for the Councilwoman? Yes, Councilman Emerson, to be followed by Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. I understand Councilwoman Hiller's amendments, and I support those. I wasn't clear of the city manager's amendment. Is that?
There's, let's see, let's find.
Got to look in the 39-page document for that.
Yeah, I did print it. But,
Yeah, there's a list of people that serve on the Housing Task Force Committee, and it lists, one of those people that are listed is the Planning and Development Director, and all I did was add the word "or" designee behind his name.
and what if we want the planning director to have to be there every meeting?
Well, that's my intent, and I'm taking care of that, so.
No, thank you, I support that, thank you.
Councilman Dobler?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a general question, I guess, for the city manager. The impact of the changes here plus amendment number 2, does that essentially eliminate the SORT program?
No, it doesn't eliminate the SORT program. It will continue as it currently is until decisions are made by the governing body. We will have a proposal at some point this year before we start the budget process in the next year to make a decision on whether we want to make changes to SORT.
Okay.
And that is still being formulated by staff. We have the information, but with other things that have been going on, we've set it aside for a period of time here. But we will eventually bring proposal back as it relates to the current concept that's been presented to us for Dreams program, and looking at SORT as well and determining which way or a combination of the two that we want to proceed with how we finance projects that are done in our low to moderate income neighborhoods.
Okay, I think the only comments I've received in the last week or two, apparently people dreaming about the SORT program. Play on words there.
I got it.
Yeah. No, people seriously concerned, I guess, about, I mean, I think the essence of the SORT program to concentrate funding in an area where it makes an impact.
Yes.
Shows an impact rather than spreading it all over the city where it may not. And I don't know if that's where we're headed, but I think there will be some concern later as we talk about potentially eliminating the SORT program. Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Dobler, that is the debate that we need to have at some point.
Wonderful. Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I apologize. I think I've got some poison ivy going on with my eyes here. I just want to make sure was a concern of a lot of my constituents, was that they were told that the SORT money that they were granted was going to go away once we approve this. And that's not correct. Am I right or wrong?
You're correct. SORT will not go away with anything that's approved tonight. That program continues. It was approved in the most recent CIP and will be executed as we have been. It would be the next consideration for SORT that would be affected. And so we're going to make that decision in time frame that will allow us to be able to pivot if we decide we want to, or continue it if we want to.
Okay, because I think that they were thinking once this is approved, the monies would automatically go away as well. And I agree that is something that's going to be a huge debate that we need to look forward to, because I've seen SORT work and I've seen it kind of be at a standstill. And so I just want to make sure that we're getting what we need. Thank you.
Okay. So in front of us, we have a motion and a second for the amendments provided by Councilwoman Hiller, as well as City Manager, by adding a designee to the Planning Director. If there's no additional questions, we will proceed by voting to amend the document.
Council members Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
No.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, Valdivia Aquila voting no, the motion carries.
Okay, now we have an amended document. Do we have a motion in order for us to approve the document as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Hiller. Do we have a second? Second. We have a second by the Deputy Mayor. Additional comments or questions on the amended document? Seeing none, we proceed by voting to approve the document as amended.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
No.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, Ms. Valdivia Aquila voting no, the motion carries.
We now move on to item E, if the clerk would read.
E is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout supporting the expansion of Amtrak passenger rail service in Oklahoma and Kansas.
This document is coming to you. I am on several listservs as well as Councilwoman Hiller, and I was hearing conversations, and so is Councilman Duncan. We have all demonstrated an interest in ensuring that our Amtrak station not only is in our community, but that it's funded. and we want to have our operator back. And we received information that at this point in time, there's an effort to create some advocacy and awareness. Immediately upon receiving the document, pass it on to city manager for review to be brought to the council. And you have in front of you a document advocating for us to be supportive of the Amtrak stations. However, I do want to yield the floor to Councilman Duncan because he received the document and promptly worked on some amendments. So Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have an amendment this evening. Pretty straightforward, I think. I'm not sure there'll be any opposition, but you never know around here, which is the way it should be. Two additions. One is in the whereas section. I would like us to add, whereas Amtrak eliminated the ticket agent, also called a customer service representative, from Topeka in 2018, and such elimination has reduced important services for patrons at the Topeka station. And I would like to follow that up with a section 7, which says the city of Topeka urges Amtrak to restore to the Topeka station a full-time customer service representative to serve the traveling public. As you all know, that was eliminated. It made some news at the time. You can still take the train, you just got to stand out there in the dark and no one gets to help you. And I've done it a few times, actually. But it'd be nice to at least encourage them, since we're doing this tonight, to remind them that we would like that person back when the time comes. So,
Councilman Duncan, would you like to make that in the form
I would.
of
I
an
would like to
amendment?
make that, like to move that we pass that amendment.
Do we have a second for that? Councilwoman
Second.
Hiller.
Should
Okay.
let Councilwoman Ortiz second it, though. That's her big thing.
Oh, Councilwoman Ortiz is then the second for this amendment. So at this point in time, do we have any other questions with regards to this matter? Seeing none, we
Mayor.
proceed. Yes, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Karen. We've been working on this for a long time. We've been supporting this for a long time. They took our ticket agent out and then they brought him back, and then they took him out again. Retirees have been down there. They're the ones that take care of our building. They're all volunteers. We are the capital city. And they always say that our ridership is down. Well, how can you get tickets if nobody's down there? You know, and I agree with Spencer. You know, we have all of those people that ride the train and they're standing outside at 1 o'clock, 12:30 at night, and they're standing out there 1 in the morning. And it's, if you have never rode, I've rode both ways to, I have family in California and Chicago. It's a great ride. It's great to have. And now this will take us to Texas. So when KU was playing Texas, all those college kids could have got on the train and went right on down. So we've been following this for a long time, and Karen's been in there, right in there with us fighting too. So I'm very glad that we're bringing this up, and we just need to continue to stay on them so we can get that our ticket agent back. You know, when I see a little town in California that can have a ticket agent that's smaller than Topeka, there's a problem. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. At this point, we would vote for the amendment provided by Councilman Duncan.
Councilmember Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes?
Lesser,
Yes.
and Mayor Daley Isla.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Now with this, we have an amended document. What is the pleasure of the governing body? I will look at Councilwoman Ortiz to see if she would like to make an amendment, a motion for the amended document. Councilwoman Ortiz makes the motion, Councilwoman Hiller seconds, and if there's any questions or comments.
I do want to make a couple comments to make sure that everybody knows what, the citizens anyway, know what's in here. Because there actually were 3 parts that came forward with an urgent encouragement for us to get support from local governments, because Congress is looking at this right now. Whereas Amtrak was really threatened by the last administration, and then of course with COVID, there simply weren't any riders. I think everybody knows that we're on the Southwest Chief line that runs from Chicago to LA. But by a year ago, they were cutting back the only service we have to 3 days a week. And we've been through also issues about track repair near Lamy, Colorado, or Lamy, New Mexico, and through the corner of Colorado, and threats to the continuation of the train service that we do have pretty steadily for the last few years. So to have this, the first thing for us is a commitment to continuing in full service, daily service of the Southwest Chief, which is huge. Part of this bill, which we're a little piece of, is to add 160 communities to the cross-country network. That is huge. For us in particular, there are 2 expansions proposed that we are part of. One is the Heartland Flyer, which has been talked about for a long time, but that takes connections from Newton, Kansas, which is on the Southwest Chief route, and then go down into Oklahoma, through Wichita and to Oklahoma. And that's just a big link for folks. And then there is a new one that hasn't even been started, which is called the Northern Flyer, which would go between Fort Worth and Kansas City, and therefore would include us as well. So with all that, it's a huge bill for us. We got, some of us that were on listservs got notice that Senator Moran, who has been an active advocate for rail service, held a press conference, an open news conference this afternoon at 4 on this whole bill. And then somewhere in the course of last week, I guess they passed something already, and for the cross-country trains that are in the western half of the country, they've also renewed live kitchens and fresh cooked food, again, which were the hallmark of train travel for years. I mean, real dishes, silver plate, linen, and so on. And the dining cars were amazing in terms of the great food. So this is not just a save our train, but it's a huge bill as well as getting our station master back. So thank you. I'm excited about it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had one question on this. On 98, like towards the end of page 3, it lists that, it says, be further resolved that the city clerk will provide copies of this resolution too, and it lists a lot of senators and reps, but it doesn't list all of our reps from this area. I didn't know, is there a particular reason we're not sending it out to all of them?
As far as I'm aware, that was the list that they provided, and so that doesn't preclude us from expanding it, but it was the list that they recommended that we send to.
Okay, thank you.
There actually was some discussion about making sure that they were listing the ones that they had, and I know part of my request when I sent this forward was to get everybody else on there. I would certainly encourage an amendment that we add all of our elected reps, state and federal anyway, before this goes out, since they're named on the letter as well.
Absolutely. City Attorney, could we just make that a part of the motion for approval with the inclusion of?
Yes, with those additional folks.
Perfect. Okay. Would the 2 individuals that made the motion and seconded be okay with that friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, we proceed by voting.
Are we voting?
No, we voted
No,
for
we're voting on the
amending.
motion, but there was a friendly amendment.
There's a friendly amendment. Do we have to vote on the friendly amendment? We don't have to vote on the friendly amendment.
Okay.
It's a friendly amendment.
Okay.
That's why I asked the question, so that we could then vote
Yeah, we got it.
Once.
Okay.
Council members Valdivia Acula,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor Daley Isla,
Yes.
and Hiller.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Now we move on to the non-action items. Non-action item A, if the clerk would read.
A is discussion regarding an update on the neighborhood health map.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we are going to start the discussion and presentation related to the neighborhood health maps. This is something that we've done on a every 3-year basis. Tonight, Dan Warner, Planning Division Director, will present on the neighborhood health maps. Dan? All yours.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, Council, thanks for allowing this presentation. One bit of information before I get started. Bryson Risley, who's our neighborhood planner and planning analyst, is responsible for this information for this neighborhood update, and he definitely wore his planning analyst hat on this one. It's a pretty big project. So with that, I'm presenting the Topeka Neighborhood Health for 2020. So what is neighborhood health? This is really a triage metric for neighborhoods. We use residentially based indicators, and ultimately what the data is used for is to help guide investment decisions and help prioritize resources. Neighborhood health is 5 different vital signs. So those signs are listed on the slide there, and I'll touch on those. So poverty is based on the U.S. Census information. Crimes is Part 1 crimes, and that's per 100 population, so we get that information from the police department. Residential property value data and home ownership data is gleaned from the Shawnee County appraiser information. And then unsafe structure data is information that we get from property maintenance. So in order to get to neighborhood health, we need to average the vital signs. So each of those vital signs has a score assigned to it. We average those scores, and that tells us if that block group or that neighborhood is healthy, outpatient, at risk, or intensive care, which are the health classifications. So what's changed for 2020? So again, this is a 2020 update. The last time we measured neighborhood health was 2017. So there's 117 census block groups citywide. So in 2020, we had 11 block groups that got better, got a better health rating, 1 block group that fell to outpatient, 3 that fell to at risk, and 3 that fell into intensive care. So overall, more block groups up than down. We've been calculating neighborhood health since 2000, so we've really noticed some trends, and citywide health is trending up. So again, this is census block groups. So intensive care and at-risk block groups were cut from 28 to 27% from 2017. And since 2000, intensive care and at-risk block groups are down 37 to 27%. Healthy and outpatient block groups have improved 72 to 73% from 2017 and up 10% since 2000. We also look at NIA health, and that's trending up as well. So healthy and outpatient block groups improved 36 to 44% from 2017, and a big jump 23 to 44% since 2000. Then intensive care and at-risk block groups are cut 64 to 56% in 2017 and have cut 77 to 56% since 2000. So where are those changes in 2020? So 2 maps here. The better health rating block groups are on the left-hand side. The worst health rating is on the right side. I'll give some highlighted block groups and start with the better health rating. So Highland Acres, which is on the east side of town, it's the first time receiving a healthy health rating. This is really due to significant reduction in crimes per 100 people and also a reduction in secured and unsafe structures. So 2 indicators there that really drove that health change. College Hill returned to an outpatient health category that was at risk in 2017. Big change there was a massive 26 percentage point drop in poverty. East Topeka North, this is the first ever outpatient health rating for that neighborhood. There were 3 indicators that actually improved for East Topeka North from 2017. And finally, on the improvements, certainly not least here, Highcrest West, which is the northeast section of Highcrest, west of Southeast Adams and north of 35th Street. This is the best ever score that neighborhood block group has had, and it's the first ever at-risk health rating. And one of the big drivers of that score was the reduction in the number of Part 1 crimes per 100. So the next I want to highlight a few of the worse block groups, the worst health rating. So downtown, the northern block group, that's the first time that it's fallen into the intensive care health rating since 2007. And this is really driven by the increase in the number of secured and unsafe structures. I didn't mention the other downtown block group previously, but that one went up. So that's south of the one that went down. And that was the first ever outpatient health rating for that downtown block group. So block groups up and down downtown. There's a block group that's shared by 3 neighborhoods. It's Historic Holiday Park, Tennessee Town, and Central Park. That's dropped to the intensive care health rating for the first time since 2007. And there were a couple indicators that dropped that led to that. And then finally, historic North Topeka East dropped to intensive care, first time since 2007. 2 issues really, the increase in the number of secured unsafe structures and a slight decrease in owner occupancy rates. So why did these things change? So first off, some larger trends here. So pandemic impacts are really not evident in this data. We just don't know what the pandemic will do to neighborhood health. 2020 indicators just don't have that information yet. So the economy is improving overall, so we have fewer people in poverty and an improved job market. Within the housing market for Topeka, the for sale inventory is very low. We have values appreciating, going up, and overall less desire to own. And then finally, we have more blighted and vacant structures that are being cited. Long term, this will likely lead to improved values and home ownership rates as those homes become improved and sort of lift the boats in the rest of that neighborhood. This information is NIA block groups. So across the top are the number of block groups that went up per each of those indicators. And across the bottom, the number of block groups that went down for each one of those indicators. The highlights here are poverty. There was a big improvement in poverty for the NIA block groups, 31 up, 8 down. And then similarly, the unsafe structures, there was quite a bit more down than up. Property values and single-family home ownership are relatively level, and public safety was down a little more than it was up. Next thing I want to talk about is sort analysis. So the 2020 neighborhood health information was used to analyze the NIA target areas. So these target areas that received SORT funding previously. So 76% of those target areas saw a positive or neutral improvement to health scores, and a 16% increase in the actual health classification. 26% were down, saw a decrease in health scores, and 3% were down in actual health classification. So essentially a cumulative 13% increase in all SORT target areas. So we'll try to help the public understand these trends in data by, we have a very good website, open access to data online. We've reached out to a few of the impacted neighborhoods already, and we're scheduled to present to the CAC in July. There are a number of programs that we update, or measures that we update. I want to highlight the NRP. Last cycle, so 3 years ago, we synced up the health update with the NRP update because the NRP boundary is based on the health update. So we've updated neighborhood health now. We're going to kick off and start working on the NRP this year. So last thing here, overall summary, more areas improved than not since 2017. And important to note, East Topeka continues its rise. In 2017, East Topeka was up to heights it hadn't been before, and it continues to get better. Property values and incomes positively impacted these health numbers. Again, property values are up and the economy is improving. And again, we don't know how COVID will impact this information. Ramped up anti-blight initiatives should help overall ratings even as more properties are cited. And then finally, Long-term NIA health is trending up. Healthy and outpatient block groups in the NIAs have nearly doubled since 2000. We have, again, all this information on the website in various forms. With that, I'll be happy to try to answer questions.
Thank you so much for this presentation. It's wonderful when we have two unrelated sets of data that are saying the exact same thing. So we recently had a press conference with the Greater Topeka Partnership in which we were celebrating how our community was seeing improvements in quality of life, designated by changes in the levels of poverty in our community, as well as more gains in different neighborhoods. And it's just wonderful to see how this completely independent with different marker report is showing the same thing. I would be remiss if I did not thank all the volunteers in the NIAs that are working so hard on a regular basis with their council members, with our staff, to make sure that their communities are thriving. Your work is not going in vain. Look at the increase in success that we have because of these volunteers engaging. Our staff working extremely hard, and with the numbers of properties that we are seeing drop, because we've been aggressive with demolition and aggressive with partnering with organizations like Cornerstone, Habitat, and other organizations that are rebuilding properties, and also, even more recently, Scent, that is doing a lot of work in that High Crest area. We're starting to see some significant transformation. So it takes time, but these good things happen to our community. So thank you all, and this governing body as well, who by the policies that we're making is also making some of that impact as well. So comments or questions for our team? Councilman Duncan.
Okay, some questions, just so I can understand what I'm looking at. Are secured buildings, because it's labeled secured buildings and unsafe structures, are those two categories, or is something considered a, which I'm not sure it could be, that kind of be an oxymoron to some degree, a secured unsafe structure? Right? I guess it could be, but so there's two different things that are put into one category, or is that one sort of?
Councilman Duncan, that is two different categories.
Okay, so can you give us the quick definition of what defines a secured building and what defines an unsafe structure?
So we used to call secure buildings boarded homes. So those would be the ones that are open to the, and have been needed to be secured or boarded. Windows are open or they're vacant. So that's a secured. The unsafe is people could be living there and it is not, it might be secured, but it is unsafe. Something is, the porch is leaning, or the foundation or the roof has a hole in it, or something to that effect.
Okay.
It's a serious issue. That's the point here, is these are serious housing condition measures, not, these are the worst of the worst.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and then my last comment, which is not a discussion to say for tonight, but seems like at some point we need to have a more serious conversation about what steps we should be taking. I mean, if we have something that's clearly an unsafe structure, I mean, I know we complain and groan about state law and handicap with the courts, but unsafe structures give us a lot more leeway into those, what we can start to do to attack those. And based on this chart, it seems if we attacked those alone, some of these ratings would come up pretty quick and make serious improvements to those neighborhoods. So I know it's not a tonight conversation, but one we probably need to put on the radar. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
Mike Hedges.
Councilman Lesser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A quick question. I know that you said that a lot of none of this data basically realized the COVID crisis that we thought we faced. My question from a proactive status is, in this, do we have the ability, though, in any of this data to know what we possibly could be looking at in the fall when the moratorium on foreclosures, on evictions, on all those probably are lifted? Do we have any data that shows how many foreclosures we basically have currently? Do we have a way to track that?
We don't have that data. The city doesn't have that data. I know previously we were, for some other project, we were able to purchase data that was related to foreclosures, but the city does not track that on our own.
I only ask that from a proactive measure, as you know, the pressure on the housing market right now is obvious, much more demand than there is supply. Some of the articles I've been reading have talked about a portion of that being the reason being the lack of foreclosures actually coming to the market, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to make sure that we're prepared for when, you know, this period comes, that we possibly have at least kind of looked at the data so we can react, you know, proactively versus reactionary.
Okay.
City manager.
Councilman Lesser, the other thing that I will add is that with ProChamps and our program as it relates to the foreclosure registry, we do get that information, but it may not be quite as proactive as you're hoping. But we will find out through that organization where we have foreclosures. So there may be a slight delay, but we are going to end up finding out about it and being able to address it. So that's about as quick as I think we can, because it has to be filed, and then that company that we work with, ProChamps, is able to find out that information and allow us to pursue it.
I think that's good. I just want us to be cognizant of what's coming, you know, versus when it does, not being prepared for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would agree with Councilman Lesser. I think something is going to be coming down the pike, and I don't think it's going to be, I think it's going to hurt a lot of people. But I just have a couple of questions. When we look at the city, I guess the first page and then second page, where it has here health status, single family home ownership, all these different metrics we're looking at. Then it says poverty, percentage of persons below poverty. So that's taken from the Census Bureau's 2015 to 2019 American Community Survey. And the majority of this other information, it looks like, is taken from 2020, not all of it. But I'm just wondering, is there going to be any move to put the most current census information with the census that just got completed in that poverty demographic there?
So when we update again in 3 years, we will figure out what is the most current census information at that point. So this, what's reflected there is the 5-year average, and that is the most current survey. So I guess I'm not clear if the decennial census will have the same information as the survey. It might not have quite the breadth of information, so we still might end up using the survey in 3 years.
Okay.
Councilwoman, I can say that the next survey will be sent, I believe, in the next 2 years it goes out. It usually trails the decennial census, and by a year or two. I don't know exactly, but it should be coming within the next 2 years. We'll have additional data related to poverty rate.
Okay. And also, when you're talking about NIA health trending up, what do you mean by that? Are you meaning the maps that show the breakdown of NIAs and how some of them are in blue and pink and others are in red, and that shift, or what all plays into the NIA health?
So it's the composite score. So it's the average of all of those factors. They're averaged into a composite score. And we have neighborhood snapshots for all of these NIAs, and you can see the data from 2000 all the way to 2020. And it's that score, that last score in there that's changed, that composite. It's blue when it used to be red in 2020, or in 2000. So that's what we're measuring, is that composite score, how it's changed since we started doing this, or from the last time we measured in 2017.
Okay, because I guess what I was looking for, and I don't know if this is ever put in any type of reports like this, is the actual health, and I don't know how you would rate that of the NIAs themselves. I think that anybody that works with neighborhood improvement associations knows that it is very, very hard to keep, for them to staying going and active. A number of NIAs are actually barely hanging on by a thread. And so I think that that is relevant information. I don't know if necessarily to put it in this report, but I think it's relevant and it's worth having a conversation about somewhere down the road, because it should be a challenge to us in whatever neighborhood relations turns into, wherever it is now, for outreach and out-of-the-box creative thinking on how we reinvigorate these NIAs. Because without these reinvigorated NIAs, our neighborhoods are going to be suffering even more than they are already. So I was just trying to get an idea of what that actually meant, and I understand now. Thank you.
Other questions? Councilman Emerson, followed by Councilwoman Hillis.
Thank you, Mayor. Are these weighted in any way, or is everything just given the same weight? The different areas?
They're weighted the same.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And I guess I'm just going to throw this out here, and I see that the police chief is here, so I'll give my plea. And if you read earlier in the comments from NIAs, the number one thing that people in my NIA say they want is, frankly, return to the community officers coming to the NIA meetings. And I can tell you, and I know there's a lot of reasons to not do that, Chief, but I'll tell you, that makes a big difference to the NIAs. And I saw in a couple of my NIA neighborhoods, of course, we were spoiled. We had fantastic officers that would come to the meetings. But I saw several times there were problems that were addressed at those meetings, and it's just not as immediate now. So I guess that would be kind of my plea to the city manager and maybe the police chief, that if there's a way to get, even if they can't come to everyone, if there's a way to get community officers back, those people knew our neighborhoods, and like I said, they could solve problems. It wasn't just you're calling, making a report. They would go that night, and I'll just say Officer Bracken was fantastic, and Morgan could go, and he would get something fixed that night, and it was just a great service. So that's my plea. If there's any way to do that, I think that would pay a large dividend. So thanks.
Councilwoman Hiller, to be followed by Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mayor. A follow-up to Councilman Emerson's question. Are there any things that you observed in terms of, it sounds like you've used the same measurement, but for instance, with vacant buildings, was there a different, are we documenting more of them, or were we documenting just as many that were vacant or unsecure, or whatever the two words are? Have there been any changes in how the data that you use was collected, I guess is a better way to ask, along the way in any of these 5 categories?
I think the boarded structures, securements is a good example. They, beginning in 2017, started citing, or maybe before that, started citing more. So we got more from them than we used to be getting. So we had to change the way we kind of determine our ranking for that.
Okay.
So we changed our methodology a little bit, and we checked again in 2020, and we're still getting more. So we're getting more volume than we were, because they're just out there doing more than they used to.
Okay, so some things like that, if we wondered about them, we should probably check with you, because if I worried about that, and I asked Bill a little bit earlier, for instance, the public safety calculation is apparently made by comparing the number of incidents to the number of residents. And so downtown is a tank deep red, and we've all spent a lot of time talking about the fact that we have very little crime downtown, and if that ended up being red because there's nobody there, that's not quite reflective, for instance. And I don't recall whether we were calculating it before, but I want to be able to, I may have some more questions like that, but because if you're not recalibrating a little bit where you have an odd one like that, where there's so few residents to compare basically a low count, because those are scary numbers for us to live with. I mean, it's hard enough. This is so valuable, and you guys do such a great job on it, but it helps us target where we want to do action, but it's also scary to be in a place that somebody else is going to check that thing and say, I don't want to invest there because. And so there's really two sides to it. I want to make a comment, and I don't want to be Debbie Downer after all the nice things the mayor said, but if you look at these charts, I'm not as impressed with, and everybody knows I've been working on the issues of SORT and DREAMS and the neighborhoods and so on. You know, a net gain of 13% in ratings after we've invested $30 million in those neighborhoods after the last 20 years. I think we obviously need to be retooling this. I mean, why we don't have everybody up to at least light blue by now, you know, I'd like to see us, and I appreciate my colleague, Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala's comments as well. As we work to retool neighborhood relations and what we're doing with neighborhoods, it shouldn't be just to notch up. I mean, 10% on one, on a score of 1.0 isn't much of a gain. It might sound nice, but we just got to work on this. And if you look at the detail sheets that we have in this report, what you'll see is the neighborhoods are going up and down. And the net increase, depending, you could pick a start date and an end date, but a lot of them are in the same place or even worse. I think the two East Topeka ones are the ones that have made a net gain and pretty well sustained it. But even then, when your net gain is up to 2.2, we've just got some work to do to relook at the programs. I would just encourage everyone. We're going to go and talk about NRP again soon too, but I'll have some other questions on specifics, but I think the detail numbers are pretty telling about how it's going up and down. And when you look at where staff is still wanting to lean on SORT, but when you look at when the neighborhood had SORT and then you go along that thread, it's just not, it doesn't go up even the 3-year gap that they said, but then it's not sustaining, it's wobbling, and maybe that's because of a spike in crime one year or something like that. But I think we all need to do the deep dive into these different categories as well as we work with our neighborhoods, you all as well as us, to identify what they want to do to make serious change.
Councilwoman Nager, to be followed by Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to echo what Councilman Emerson had noted about the community officers. The main thing that I have gotten feedback on from our different neighborhoods in District 6 is that the people who have been involved in the past got really used to the way things used to be done, and they had a really good contact with the police department, which made them feel safer, and it also made them better. They are felt enabled to make their community safer. And so as we move forward with all of this, especially as we see that safety, especially since that's something that could be true safety or even just the perception of safety, since that brings our scores down, not that it's all about the scores, but it really is about the quality of life of our citizens, making sure that we have those clear defined roles within our resources like the fire department and the police department, available to organized neighborhood groups as well as individuals. Thank you so much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that what we're looking at is, a whole lot of paperwork, which is really good. But being in the trenches in the district that I serve, and I mean like in the trenches, what I am seeing is that there is a lot of intersecting issues here. And I think we really need to get an understanding on this body level and administration and across the city about how things intersect. It is not just one thing. It is a multiplicity of things. And one thing we could start looking at is, how poverty impacts neighborhoods, how lack of a living wage impacts neighborhoods, how seniors on fixed incomes that can barely pay their bills impacts neighborhoods and deterioration, et cetera. There is a need for code enforcement, a more vigorous, creative, strategic code enforcement. I have been told by Chief Wheels that the CPOs are back at the NIAs, and I've been seeing them at our NIAs. And so it would be really easy for me to just sit here and say this is all about the city, but it's not. Because one thing I have seen, and I've told folks as we work harder in Oakland and hopefully moving into North Topeka eventually, is that we are responsible as a neighborhood to reinvigorate our neighborhood watches, to get getting to know the neighborhoods, helping each other more, getting things like community gardens going where we can help feed those that don't have enough money to buy decent produce and are suffering in ways that I don't even think we can understand. There is also the social responsibility that we are talking about more and more within our neighborhoods about you live in a neighborhood. So if you want to be a hoarder in your backyard or in your front yard or whatever, you have to understand that it cannot continue to be the old way of we are going to teach you and help educate you and talk you over a year or two into compliance. Because folks need to understand that the communities that they live in, they have a responsibility to each other. I mean, it's some type of social contract. So it is all interwoven, it's all complex, and these numbers may do justice for a little bit, but the bottom line is that we as a city, we as elected officials that are in these LMI neighborhoods and the neighbors themselves, we all have to figure out a way that we're going to start working together in a more proactive fashion. Otherwise, I believe we are also going to continue just to see an up and down cycle, plus continued diminishment in these neighborhoods. And I also do not agree at all that that the SORT grants are something that should be gotten rid of. I think that looking at the up and down of what SORT has or has not achieved is just indicative of some of these other interconnecting issues that we're having, and SORT may be showing that in its numbers and how successfully it has played out. But I would never support the diminishment or the ending of the SORT. We have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Yeah, there's no comments for our team. Councilwoman Hiller.
I wanted to react to Councilman Lesser's question, and he asked mostly about foreclosures, and I'm personally not that informed about foreclosures, but I did do some checking around the nonprofit network about the people's concern about an eviction crisis. And overall, the sense is that because the benefits have been, unemployment benefits have been strong, and also the assistance, at least here, but in many places around the country, for mortgage and rent and utility assistance has been very available and relatively generous. The eviction moratorium is just for people who were unable to pay because of COVID, not just didn't want to pay and were riding it out. So landlords that have had people that were just simply tearing up the place and hanging out have been able to take actions as needed for a while once the courts opened. And otherwise, we're really not expecting an eviction crisis here. So that was very comforting to me. And I would think that those abilities to pay would translate to the mortgages as well. I'm not as certain about that. But thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the comments that have been made. Thank you again for the presentation. It's encouraging, but I have to agree. I think there's a long way to come. I'm not looking at you like it's your responsibility to do that. But I do think that I can echo some of the comments here as what I see this report is being for all of us, not just the council members, but everybody who lives in this city, is a call to action to do something for themselves with the city to try to improve the neighborhoods that they live in. The government is not here to solve all the problems. They are here to help and support the efforts of their citizens. And the citizens have shown in this community that they're very capable of coming to that call for action and doing the good things that they need to do to help improve their lot in life. And I don't ever like to refer to people of, that are without means or poor people. I don't think that helps the conversation. I do think that people who need resources need to look at each other at the beginning of those resources, because I've driven through some of the neighborhoods, and I know Councilwoman Alcala has, and noted a couple places that just exist, I can't believe, for no other reason that because people look the other way. And people have to quit doing that in their neighborhoods. Where there is a need, address it. Bring your needs to the city who can support it through code enforcement. And zoning, I think, has to be a stronger piece of that code enforcement, because I think a lot of that falls to the zoning as well and isn't being coordinated well enough with code enforcement to help those changes happen. I'm encouraged that there's positivity, but I agree that after a period of time with that much money being invested, we should have a more sustainable improvement in our neighborhoods. And I appreciate, I guess, the starting point, but I do really think that this is a time for us to really quit looking at the negative piece and bringing in the community as real partners in improving this city. So I appreciate your work. I do think that, in my opinion, it really is a call to action for our own citizens to work with the city to bring things happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bolívar Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Another point I just want to make on this, when I talk about how we've been talking within our communities as we've started trying to reestablish the Neighborhood Watch program, which was very overwhelming to a lot of people. We have issues with a huge amount of allegations of drug houses, of meth houses, both in North Topeka and in Oakland. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. These are things that need to be dealt with. And I think that some of the frustration that our residents are seeing is, how do we engage in these? You know, you want us to take videos, you want us to take photos, you want us to keep track, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this is the part where the city needs to come in a more proactive manner, because I can name at least 10 residents that I'm working with right now that do everything that they need to do to get information because of the drug houses that are next to them. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this, because some organization in Topeka wants to hear this and they want to see Topeka like this or this. Topeka is wonderful. Topeka is also like many other cities our size that are struggling with these same issues. And so what we need to see, what I've been talking to Chief in detail about, and he has been very helpful, is how we get more interactions and a better customer service mindset with TPD working with the average citizen. Because I'm telling you, they haven't been feeling it. They have not been feeling it. And they are taxpayers, they are constituents, and whether it's Topeka Fire Department, whether it's Topeka Police Department, whether it's code, whether it's zoning, whether it's me, whether it's city manager, whether it's anybody, we're accountable to them. And so I think that, you know, I don't know if that's going to come like a come to Jesus meeting about that, but in these underserved neighborhoods who work very hard, oftentimes 2 jobs or 3 jobs, and work very, very hard and are trying to manage this as well, and we're trying to encourage them, join the NIAs, join the Neighborhood Watch program, join the community garden. They also want to see action on the other side as well. So again, we're talking complex nuance, and it's something that you just can't have one evening conversation about. These have to be ongoing conversations. Otherwise, whatever we put on paper is just, going to look better than what it really looks in these neighborhoods, where those that serve in these neighborhoods know what it's really like. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Thank you. We now move on to non-action item B, if the clerk would read.
B is discussion regarding the renewal and adoption of the Neighborhood Revitalization Program for years 2022 to 2024.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So as it relates to the health map, one of the tools that has been created well before me, that's been done by the city, is the creation of the Neighborhood Revitalization Program. It's a program that provides an opportunity for individuals that do improvements in some of these areas to be able to capture a tax abatement so that they're able to then have some help with the cost that's required in order to do those kinds of improvements in the neighborhoods that we see increase their quality of life within that neighborhood. So we're here tonight to talk about the potential renewal of that program and a discussion of the map that corresponds with the NRP. So, Bill?
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening again, Your Honor, City Council members. We come to you as Dan just did, every 3 years or so. We come early in the renewal year. We want to get this discussion out before you and give you an overview of the program, its performance, and then any changes that you want to consider. We have a couple tonight that I want to bring to your attention, so we'll get into that in a moment. The background, as some of you know, we were the first city in the state to adopt an NRP program that's authorized by the state. We've done this 8 different times. This will be our 9th renewal year. And we usually have all other taxing entities participating because we have at least 5 other taxing entities that have to sign off on this to have a full rebate. And obviously, this is expiring at the end of the year this year. So we, looking at its past performance and current performance, we have at least, since 1995, 600 applications that have been approved. We see about between 10 and 20 applications approved over the last 10 years, and we've been pretty consistent in the last few years with that number. The investment is up to $464 million since '95. That's all the investment that's been made through these applications. We are averaging about 15 to 18 million the last 3 years or so, which is average. We didn't have any big projects to boost that number the last 3 years like you see in some previous years. Our return on investment with this program, as we continue to update this, but for every dollar that ends up getting rebated, it accounts for over 8 that are invested in that property improvement. And then also in terms of new tax revenue, so the rebates, once the properties go back onto the rolls without the rebate, that tax revenue continues to come in to the taxing entities. And so that amounted to about $7 million for the city of Topeka alone, which would be a post-rebate tax revenue that would not have otherwise been realized without this program. And that's just the floor. That's no economic impact. There's no multipliers in that. That's just purely just coming from property tax revenue. As we heard earlier, we also try and use this to incentivize our highest priority areas, which would be the at-risk and intensive care neighborhoods, and we've been fairly successful with that. 3/4 of all the investment since this program has been started has gone into those intensive care at-risk neighborhoods. Over 500 new units have been constructed of housing. Okay, the NRP model. There's 3 elements to what makes up the program or this plan. You actually end up approving a plan, and that plan sets forth the area. It sets the physical area, boundary. It sets forth the type of rebates, how much, and then there also ingrains some but-for tests so that we know that there is a need for the incentive before somebody applies. So the first thing is the area, and as you've picked up on, we tailor this NRP boundary to the latest health data. And in this case, we try to tailor those boundaries around the at-risk intensive care areas. The changes this year from 17, the boundary or the areas actually shrunk a little, which is when this boundary shrinks, that's good news. That means there's a few outpatient areas that, few at-risk that it went to outpatient, so we have excluded those areas. So we have about a 1 square mile smaller area than we did before. Rebates. Rebates, if you generally not familiar with how this works, if you make an improvement to your property and your appraised property value goes up by at least 10% on a residential property and at least 20% on a commercial, then you get returned that extra property tax caused by your improvements. So if I caused $100 worth of new taxes because of my improvements, and my rebate is 95% of that, I get $95 back. We have different rebate types. The two that we've had in the past, and we have a third one for consideration in this plan. The standard rebate is a full 95% for the first 5 years and 50% for the second 5 years. And that's been that way. Standard Plus, that is something in the last couple cycles we've targeted a more sweeter rebate so that we have a full 95% for all 10 years in intensive care areas, in historic areas, and infill housing. So any new residential construction. The third rebate I want to talk about for consideration is what we're coining a super rebate, and that really just is that's an extension of that standard plus. Instead of 10 years, you could approve it up to 20 years. So a full 95% up to 20 years. And where this is really come to light, we're trying to, in much of the work that, and Rhiannon's here from DTI, that we've been working with some developments in the last year and come to this realization with the TIF district is we're really at a little bit of an uneven playing field with both of those because some developments do not cause or need the TIF, some need the NRP. But the TIF is at a 20-year term. The NRP is capped at 10. We also have residential, which is a high priority for downtown. That is not taxed at the same rate as commercial. So you actually have some developers who are pulling back any housing in their mixed-use projects because of that. It just doesn't fill the gap that is needed when you talk about a tax rebate for housing. So it's important to consider that, and I think the eligible costs for TIF, again, don't always fill that gap. If you remember, TIF costs are those horizontal costs. Those are those site property acquisition, parking, infrastructure. The NRP can pay for or help go to those vertical costs, the actual construction. And so what we're trying to do is, and we see our other neighbors doing this as well, that we compete with for these types of developments, that they have gone to longer terms for the NRP to help with that choice. And if I did not mention, we would propose that would come back to you as the governing body for approval. Kind of an important thing there, because you will, just like with TIF projects, they would come back to you for approval, specific TIF projects. Okay. And then last part of that models are but-for tests. All that means is, would the project happen but for these incentives? And so the assumption is, and we bake these into the plan, is there's some default but-for test, which is we are targeting our most investment challenged areas. So we assume there is that need already. We make sure that the application is timely and that there are significant investment thresholds that they have to achieve. So it's not, these aren't small projects. These are things that otherwise would not happen. And so that is, those are what we call but-for tests. The last item that we would ask you to consider as well is for those more extraordinary rebates, i.e. that super rebate that goes beyond 10 years up to 20 years, that there should be a but-for study actually submitted for review to make sure that the need is there to go beyond 10 years. And then that would also apply to anything that you would approve that's outside the neighborhood revitalization area, which leads me into the kind of the final stretch here. In all of the plans that have been adopted, there's always been a clause through the state law. They allow you, the body, to approve what they call dilapidated structures outside of the NRP area that are worthy of preservation. So that's always been part of the plan. No, we've never had the opportunity, I think, to use that or been approached to using it. But I would just, as an example, say that the former Menninger Tower and that site, which we are in talks with trying to preserve that and fill some serious financial gaps to preserve that, would be a model fit for that clause if you want to include that in the plan. And we would suggest, if you do want to do that, to actually put that proactively in the plan so it doesn't have to come back and then we have to go make the rounds to all the other taxing entities. But that's an example. And then lastly, transferring the remaining neighborhood revitalization fund to the housing trust fund as match. We've kind of touched on this. Some of you know more about this. There is a remainder of about $241,000 in this fund that was created in the mid 2000s, which we were rebating. We weren't rebating 95%. We were rebating 80% and setting some funds, setting some of that rebate aside for future use or investment. And so that has come to, those rebates have come to an end, and so we have that's always been in the plan, every plan that's been approved, of what to do with it, and it's always gone towards affordable housing. We're supposed to go towards affordable housing, and in fact, we did that with part of it in 2019 with Cornerstone, development with Cornerstone. So there's $241,000 left. We would recommend you could transfer that into the trust fund through adoption of this plan. So that's another consideration to make. And I'll just wrap up here as far as our next steps go. So we have the discussion tonight. We would then go meet with taxing entities to do the similar presentation to make sure they have any comments, to make sure they're on board. So that we can come back to you in the fall with a public hearing and adopt the plan and then get our interlocal agreements signed by the end of the calendar year. So with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Finder, thank you for the reports. I did have one question. Looking at the map, and I don't know what the current areas are, but this looks like proposed from 22 to 24. There's an area, it looks like that's the 501 property there, the old state hospital grounds.
Yeah.
Can you explain why that is a targeted area?
Certainly. That actually has been in there for many previous cycles, back before there was any redevelopment, back when it was truly as state hospital grounds, and there was no Walmart, there was no sports park, there was no Stormont. So all of those, back in that time, we included it because we knew it was going to be, needed to be redeveloped, needed the incentives. And I think what happened back then is we had the boundary actually go out and meet it, and it included a bunch of other neighborhoods that were not at risk or not intensive care. So I think over time, those have been redrawn, and now you just have an island. I think that's what you're referring to. There's kind of an island there, and that covers the 501 property. So that's just a vestige from when it was being redeveloped, and still is being redeveloped.
Thanks, Mayor. And I guess at what point, I mean, I was actually just in there yesterday, and there's a massive, that's, what is it, active living senior community,
Yes.
which 55 isn't as old now as I used to think it was. But it's a lot of that area is now done. At what point do we say, hey, this area is 75% built out, we're going to take this away because it doesn't need incentivized anymore?
I think it's a good question. I think they still have some substantial pieces that I deal with a lot, including that one, that are still looking to get redeveloped. So that's a discussion we also have when I go to 501. That always comes up, and they ask me about that. And so they certainly like to keep that in. That's probably going to be a policy decision that staff isn't going to make. That is something that I can tell you we're working on several parcels in there to try and get that, some of those buildings actually redeveloped, scraped and rebuilt. There's a lot of land there still. So I don't know if it's there yet, but I think when we go to 501, we usually hear about that.
Thank you.
To help answer that question, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that when they redid the roads in there and so on, and then those were special assessments on the properties, so the tax abatement sort of offset the special assessments, and both at about a 10-year range, if I recall correctly. Now, they have made a lot of money on that, and they're doing fine. So whether their but-for is still important, whether they still need the incentive to finish the development, I don't know. But I do think that the offset, which is one of the reasons you do something like that, if there's some expenses to help sweeten the deal for those purchasers, I think was part of it at the start.
That is correct. Okay. There was a trade-off there, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, Bill. These are the kind of incentives we need. Infill housing focused on downtown primarily. I like the Superman thing.
Still workshopping that name, so if you have others.
Yeah, might work on that just a little bit more. But yeah, I think making it apply to the buildings you pointed out, unlike TIF, which only goes so far, I think is essential. And I would certainly be supportive of not only continuing the plan, but adding that extra piece that I think will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have a couple of questions, and one was along those lines. We actually, when this program started, was 95% for the full 10 years for everything. And for those who were paying attention or were around, it was only 2 rounds ago that we knocked that back to 50% for the second half of the 10-year abatements. I think that's right. And that came because, I think I was behind it because I went to an IEDC seminar on financial incentives, and it turned out that we had the most generous NRP in the entire country. And when we checked around comparatively, if what you want with an incentive is enough to get somebody to do something but not to give away the store, that the staging it the way we did was still a very attractive incentive comparably. So I had to look at it again. You're not proposing to change that, but with your proposal to go 95% for a whole 20 years, have you done, I'm not sure we should move this forward until we've all been sure that that's what we want you to propose to all the other taxing entities. Sure. But with that, have you done comparisons around the country for what you're proposing for your super, in terms of, again, enough incentive to get somebody in there, but not, right. We need that tax money.
No, absolutely. I think the reason it came up because of we are in the trenches, real life experiences here, talking to developers and seeing how our neighbor in Kansas City, Kansas, is using the exact same tool to attract what we want.
Okay.
And we don't have many other choices. If in a TIF setting, if those TIF costs do not rise high enough, and a lot of times they won't, that NRP is going to be the sweet nectar that they'll need. And so we're just being capped at 10. I think Wyandotte has done the same thing where they lifted it to 20. But another caveat I would say that we have in here is that's not an automatic 20.
It's a but for?
It's an 11 to 20, what I should be clear. And you, as the governing body, so when we get that study and Jeff White tears it apart and comes back and says, they need 15 years, then you can do that. So that's how it would be set up, unless you have another take on that. But we didn't want it to be an all or nothing 20. It would be a range scale.
That information we knew that when there was this discussion of the TIF, that the TIFs are pretty rare actually because of the way they're composed and that the housing might not fit. So we're getting the reality check
right
at this point. It might be helpful, I'll just speak for myself, but for us to see the concept of that program since it's new. And it sounds like you're keeping it pretty simple, but the comparisons as well would, hopefully it's a simple thing, but it would be helpful.
Okay.
One of the questions I brought in was when you said 500 new units, and that's actually new construction units, but over the whole, whatever this is, 25-year period?
Those units would have been actually since we started measuring with the health. So that's, I believe that's we weren't measuring before we started measuring the health of this program. So that's actually from 04, I believe, is those 500 units.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
When we considered this 3 years ago, you were don't let me misstate, but basically it was like, wow, we don't even know we need to do this, that people aren't using it, and particularly neighborhood people. And there was a discussion then that we would do some more promotion of it to make sure that neighborhood residents knew. That's a little trickier, a little harder to do than with the developer network, I suppose, but did that promotion happen? Could you describe what we've done?
Sure. Is Dan still here? I seem to recall, after this is done, one of the things or after it's approved, if you were a neighborhood that, for instance, was new to the area, we actually sent out notices to that neighborhood that you're now part of it. We also work with the realtors and the Sunflower, is that right? Mm-hmm. Realtor group and Linda to get the word out. We do that kind of initial push to say, hey, and I think we even had a lunch or two presentations to their groups. So because they're the ones describing this and explaining this to people when they sell property. So we do that, and that's the main things. We're trying to get the word of mouth out. We also go before sharing it with as many neighborhoods that we can. Those are the things that come to mind that we would do after this gets passed.
mean, if I lived in one of the neighborhoods and I was aware of it, whether I needed it or not, I would sign up for it, of course. Do you have any data on how many people it really served as an incentive for, that it got them to do something they otherwise wouldn't have done?
We did a survey a few years ago, actually, of people that got approved in this program, and we asked them how much they needed it and how much they didn't, and if they were truthful. They said, yeah, we really needed it. So of the people in the program, we know it's a high percentage. It wasn't 100%, I can tell you that. Not everybody said they needed it. But we kind of, that's kind of the model, I mean, that we go into with this. So I would say, no, I don't have any, again, those baked-in but-for tests are what we depend on. These are areas that are not being invested in for the most part.
Well, and I understand and support that, because it's hard for something to appraise out and so on. I just wondered, in the past, I think you've given us a map or a list that showed us where the actual housing and commercial investments. I would like to see that again.
We didn't put that in the presentation, but we have a little dot, big dot map to show a big investment and a small investment and where that was happening.
Yeah, I think that would help us all to have an idea of how well it's getting out.
Okay.
I'll have some specific questions for you later, but thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I saw something in the paper the other day about the census, that Shawnee County's lost population. I don't know if that extended down to the city of Topeka, but I assume we're going to see some population loss. Whatever we can do, get people to live here. They don't just pay property taxes, they pay sales tax, gas tax. I don't care how lucrative we have to be reasonable, but if we're competing with other communities, we need to be competing. And this looks like it's going to get us there, at least at this level. Thank you.
A follow-up thought to that. We've learned with this Choose Topeka program, we got them to include purchase, rehab, and rental when they promoted that program. I know we've talked with Rhiannon and some others at Greater Topeka Partnership about us doing cameos of the neighborhoods that exist in all of our different districts to help promote Topeka. They've discovered that they call it earned media, I guess, but an unexpected benefit of the Choose Topeka program was it got publicity of us all over the country about how affordable our housing market was. And I think if we could ride on that a little bit, and if we already have NRP, it doesn't even need to be a new program in terms of mentioning that that's available to anybody who would buy and fix up a house in our older neighborhoods. Maybe something we could look into?
Yeah, you saw a lot of applications early in this program's history, and that was a lot of individual mom and pops applying for housing repairs they were doing. And I think what we all learned is that doesn't move the appraised needle quite like an addition or a new garage, or so. Putting in new windows even is not those maintenance things. So we don't want to set expectations up either that, hey, you put new windows in and paint your house and insulate it. You're going to, your appraised value is going to go up, and your rebate's going to help. So rebates insurance against your appraised value going up because you did something to it. Mm-hmm. And we've learned you got to do something pretty good to it to make that needle go up. So that would be my only caution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
We now have public comment. We have one person signed up for public comment, Ms. Deborah Edwards.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. The situation I had signed up to speak to you about is I have been assured by people I trust that it is being resolved. However, the thing I did learn through all of that situation is that this governing body, our city manager body, our legal department body, our police body, someone needs to educate the public about our city noise ordinance. There's so much misinformation out there. No one really understands it or knows what it is. In fact, I understand there are some new police officers who have been re-educated. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now we move on to announcements. City Clerk.
Okay, for the June 15th agenda, we have 2 appointments. We have 1 presentation on the City of Topeka 2020 year-end audit. Action items include a resolution supporting a fundraiser for the Housing Trust Fund, final plat for Sherwood Park subdivision number 9, an amendment number 2 to the joint memorandum of agreement for group health insurance, a labor agreement for water, ordinance for cereal malt beverage and retail liquor stores, expanding their hours of operation for Sunday sales. And then we have an ordinance for cereal malt beverage licensees regarding residency requirement. We have a discussion on bird scooters and a second discussion on the revenue neutral rate that we'll receive by the county.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few things tonight. I wanted to announce that David Huckabee will be starting on June 14th as the Police Department Legal Counsel. I know that Lisa is very excited about adding him to her staff as it relates to and assisting the police department with their legal needs. The fire chief informed me that we have 20 young women between the ages of 14 and 20 who will participate in Camp Courage at the Topeka Fire Department program, which was developed to introduce young ladies to a career of a firefighter. Camp Courage will be held Monday, June 14th through Friday, June 18th. 0900 to 15 hours each day, or 9 to 3 p.m. TFD paramedics are have administered COVID vaccinations to over 117 Topeka residents who are homebound. And I wanted to comment that I did an interview recently for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They had some questions over some information as it relates to doing city work. And they provided a $300 honorarium, and I dedicated that to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
I just had a question, and maybe the city attorney or Spencer, our lobbyist guy, would know. Did I read recently, we'd had some issues about policing and people with suspended driver's licenses and so on. And did I see that the state has changed the laws about being able to get a driver's license back and drive legally in this session?
Not aware. It said they had to do it by a certain date. They had to get it by a certain date.
Okay. I was thinking that maybe it had loosened some things up for the ability of our citizens to be able to drive legally, and was interested in a briefing if that had occurred so that we were aware. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted just to say, all you kids who are getting involved in sports camps, please remember to stay hydrated, eat well, and get your rest. Also, those with pets, whether they be in District 2 or outside of District 2, please understand what the ordinances are for pets and the leash laws. Please make sure that your animals are watered, get water when they're outside in shady area, and also understand what the possible messes that you can get in with your dogs if you don't have an appropriate fencing for them. We have a number of dogs that are loose in the Oakland area in the past probably 6 to 8 weeks. 2 of those have resulted in either other small dogs getting attacked, or also folks getting attacked. And, pets are a responsibility. And, my thought about it is if you do not have the structures to keep your pets, within the confines that are needed so that they're not out there hurting other folks and other dogs, then why have a pet? So we're really going to start looking at this more closely in District 2. So I just want to put that out there. Also, excited to be a part of the Juneteenth parade on Saturday. We have a whole bunch of folks and we're decorating up a truck and we're going to be participating in that. And so thank you to Sherry Thomas for inviting us to come on board. Also wanted to give a big shout out to Sylvan in Utilities. He supported through the Sustainability Advisory Board that the City of Topeka has the helping in the printing of a children's coloring book called We Are the Keepers. And I talked with Sylvan this past week and we gave 50 copies to be given out at the utilities department to folks to give to their children because it talks about the Kansas River and children as water keepers. It was done by Native American artist Mona Cliff, and she is with the Ananin Nakota nations of Florida, and she's a local artist in Lawrence. And just to let folks know that this coloring book has been circulating, also it was helped along with the Mulvane Art Museum. It's been circulating throughout Topeka, and we're also making sure that it gets mailed to indigenous climate activist organizations across the United States and Canada. So just thank you to everyone that was involved. And also just want to say happy birthday to my daughter Ashley, who will be turning 30 years and on Friday. Happy birthday, Mija. Thank you.
Nothing, Mayor. Thanks.
Councilwoman Mayer.
Sorry, your microphone isn't on, Madam Mayor. So you sound very far away. I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to the fact that this is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And so if you are interested in helping to raise funds to back research to find treatment for this awful disease, the 2021 Walk to End Alzheimer's in Northeast Topeka. It's going to be in Topeka on September 25th, 2021. You can register, you can donate. They're looking to raise $70,000, so we can put them to shame and raise much more than that. I also wanted to go ahead and remember the celebrations of Juneteenth this weekend and the next, as well as celebrate with our LGBTQ community. One of the main reasons that I was really excited to be elected to City Council was to really work on updating our non-discrimination ordinance to protect those who are identify outside the hetero-cis narrative that we really push in our culture today. So I just want to celebrate you and hope that everybody's staying safe in this weather. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz, sorry I skipped you.
Mayor, you've skipped me all night. Shame on you. You will be forgiven. I just wanted to say thank you to all the residents in East Topeka that have been cutting their grass. It's noticed, and your yards look really great. And to those that haven't caught up with the ones that have been cutting their grass, we're asking you to get out there and take care of your yard. Take pride in where you live. We live there because we choose to live there. If not, you will be getting a citation, which I'm sure I'll hear from you after you get your citation. So you are responsible for your ditches. Those are the property owner's responsibility. So please make sure that you get your ditches when you're cutting your grass. I also wanted to say I wanted to shout out to the police department. Actually, I had somebody at 11:10 in the morning drive down the street, and they just threw junk, an ottoman and some other trash right in the middle of the street on 9th Street, and they kept driving. This is why it's so important to work with the NIAs, to have the NIAs cleanups that we've had for years, and to continue to have them. So hopefully we can get rid of the people that do that. They can get rid of their stuff by putting them to the curb. But I did want to thank TPD for coming and picking it up out of the street. I've always said on this council that East Topeka is not a dumping site. I will continue to say that. We have empty lots, a lot of empty lots, but it's not fair to the owners of those empty lots when you put trash out there that is not theirs. And I've received several calls this week that people have put trash out there. So let's take pride in Topeka and in East Topeka, to the residents there that choose to live there because we've grown up there. That's what we like. That's who we are. And I just wanted to say that. Mayor, you have a good day tomorrow. I know Hannah talked about the Alzheimer's. Maybe you can get some of that information so you'll remember all your council members. Love you.
I love you too. Councilman Dobler.
Nothing, yeah, I can't follow that.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things this evening. First of all, the mayor and I hung out at the zoo this morning for the groundbreaking of Giraffe and Friends. She got to shovel a little dirt, and that was nice to see that project is moving forward and on its way. So good job to the zoo, and that's going to be a great addition out there. The second thing I have is today we got the monthly report from the city manager on some of the COVID relief funds and assistance programs that have been released to the public. I'm just going to take a minute. There's no such thing as enough, and we recognize that. But I do think on the business side, from the HUD money that we've received, we've paid out over $430,000. We've committed another $128,000. There's $802,000 still uncommitted. I know some of that's already in the works, but some of it's still there. It all has to be spent by the end of October, so you need to jump on that if you're a business who hasn't yet. Maybe more importantly are the two programs, and one's about to run out, and I know that the staff is looking at ways to see if we can add some funds to that when we get some additional money. But to date, we've paid out over $1.1 million for basic needs assistance programs to help people, whether it's utility bills or mortgages or landlord issues. And I think that's important because I know that money has been absolutely essential to some of our citizens across Topeka. And I also know that these numbers tell us that we've also, through grant program that we got, have spent, what is that number? We've committed over $640,000 at this point, with another 1.2 to be spent on our assisting those who are homeless. And so again, those are important programs that are actually directly helping people, and so I'm glad to see that money's being put to use and people are able to take advantage of it. The last thing I'll say is, it's funny, 2 weeks in a row, I mentioned CBS Sunday Morning last week because we had a local business who was a part of it, but I would encourage every member of this governing body and some of our staff to go watch the entire hour of the CBS Sunday Morning from this past Sunday. It was all about policing in our communities. And it was not focused on reforms or some of those other issues which are important, but it did take a look at how different communities across the country and in other countries allocate their resources, where they put their emphasis on their programming, how those officers operate within those communities, and what they've determined is important in terms of serving the people. And it's a fascinating hour, and it does a good job of giving all sides of those questions and concerns, both from officers' perspectives, citizens' perspectives, and elected officials' perspective, the people who have to actually allocate those dollars and how they make those decisions. So it's an hour of your time, but I promise you it would be well worth it. So I would encourage everyone to go check it out. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right. At this point in time, we do have 3 executive sessions this evening. If the city attorney could read the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 15 minutes to discuss upcoming employer-employee negotiations as justified by KSA 75-4319B3. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Chief of Staff Bill Cochran, Administrative and Financial Services Director Jessica Lamondola, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, Utilities Director Braxton Copley, Senior Assistant City Attorney Catherine Walter, Budget and Performance Manager Stephen Wade, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
All right, we've heard the parameters of the executive session. What is the pleasure of the governing body? 15, not to exceed 15 for the first one. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please proceed by voting.
Council members Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes?
Lesser,
Yes.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Alcala.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
All right, before we proceed into this, we will allow 10 minutes for people to have a break. And we will start our executive session.
Okay, we have concluded the session. No, we are in need of engaging in a second executive session. If the city attorney could please read the parameters.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 30 minutes to discuss upcoming employer-employee negotiations as justified by KSA 75-4319B3. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Chief of Staff Bill Cochran, Administrative and Financial Services Director Jessica Lamondola, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, Interim Police Chief Brian Wheelis, Senior Assistant City Attorney Catherine Walter, Budget and Performance Manager Stephen Wade, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
We have heard the correct executive session. Pleasure of governing body.
So moved.
Second.
We have second by Deputy Mayor Padilla. We now proceed with the vote, and it'll be a roll call vote. So if you actually, yes, raise your hand if you support this.
All hands are raised
Okay,
here.
so we have unanimous consent to go into executive session.
Somehow you got.
Let me know when we're ready, guys.
Somehow you got muted for a second. I think we're gonna just go into the thing.
It was emailed about 1:32.
Are we ready? Okay. We have a need to extend our executive session for an additional 15 minutes, as I understand it, to continue our discussion. No action has been taken at this point. Legal, did you have something?
Roll call.
Will you speak the parameters, please?
Same
Okay.
parameters.
Same parameters as our previous executive session, just a need to extend for no more than 15 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay. You're the right hand. Thank you. Motion approved. We'll go back into executive session. Thank you.
We're ready, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Okay. All right, we are coming out of executive session, our second one, and there is a need to go into a third executive session. If the city legal would read the parameters of who needs to be present for that.
The motion is to recess into executive session for a period of time not to exceed 25 minutes to discuss upcoming employer-employee negotiations as justified by KSA 75-4319B3. In order to aid the discussion, the following individuals should be present: members of the governing body, City Manager Brent Trout, Chief of Staff Bill Cochran, Administrative and Financial Services Director Jessica Lamondola, Human Resources Director Jackie Russell, Fire Chief Craig Duke, Senior Assistant City Attorney Catherine Walter, Budget and Performance Manager Stephen Wade, and myself. No action is anticipated to be taken when the open meeting resumes in the governing body chambers.
Okay, we've listened to the parameters. For how much time do we need, City Manager? 25 minutes? Okay.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman.
Deputy Mayor, I'd like to extend the meeting until after this executive session. Our meeting ends at 10, and that's going to run us right into it.
Second.
So a motion to extend beyond 10 o'clock?
A motion to extend to finish our executive sessions?
Yes.
Beyond 10 o'clock, yes.
Okay, I have a second by Councilmember Emerson. All those in favor, raise your right hands. Emerson. Okay. So we have that amended so that we can go past 10 o'clock. And now do we vote to go into executive session? Okay. Those all in favor, please raise your right hand. Duncan, thank you. Okay, so moved. We are going into our third executive session. To exceed, hopefully, be done before 10, but we can't exceed the 10 o'clock timeline. So talk quick. Okay, thank you. We've come out of our third executive session. No exact action has been taken. If there's no further business for the body, we are adjourned.
You swapped seats on them, so they got confused.